From the gridiron to the hardwood, James Mesh breaks it all down. It's time for another episode of Cleats and Sneaks.
Welcome back for yet another edition of Cleats and Sneaks, the podcast talking about everything that's going on with the NFL and the NBA. And let me tell you, the association, we're kind of coming down that final stretch. I know we had just finished up not too long ago the All-Star break, and we're kind of in that middle point of, we got what, 24, 23 games? It kind of just depends on the team. So we're hitting that final stretch, and we're really starting to see where everybody is basically going to be. There's a little bit of movement here or there, depending on where you are in the standings, but we're starting to really see teams, unfortunately, like the Pelicans, that aren't going to be a part of the playoffs or even the play-in. You still are able to see what's going to go down for these last few stretch of games, but I am kind of curious to see how that ends up falling. I do know that you look at some of the teams like the Cleveland Cavaliers. I know they're still firmly in place in the eastern part of the standings. There's 6.5 games at the time of this recording ahead of the Boston Celtics. You even look at the Knicks. They're pretty firmly in place, I'd say, when it comes to third place, whereas you also need to see what kind of movement there could be when it comes to the play, and that's usually where it ends up being a lot of the movement, because you have the Magic, who are 29 and 31 right now. They're sitting at the 7 seed, but, I mean, within this next game, the Heat could jump them, because they're only a half game behind them. Then you have the Hawks, who are a full game behind the Heat, and then you have a few games after that, the Chicago Bulls at the 10 seed, but there is still a lot of movement, and a lot of potential movement that could go down. It's still really interesting to see the fact that Oklahoma City, they're kind of distancing themselves even more as the season goes along. Right now, 47 and 11. The next closest team in the West, the Memphis Grizzlies, at 38 and 20, 9 games away. But they very easily could be the 3 seed because the Denver Nuggets are the exact same record. So still a lot of things that could go down over these last couple of weeks as we get into March and then get into that last final stretch when we hit April, before we get into the play-in, before we get into the playoffs. But really the majority of what this episode I want it to be about is looking at the NFL offseason, because there is a lot of things that's going down. Matthew Stafford looking to somehow get $50 million a year over these next 2 years when he's 36, about to turn 37 years old. It's kind of perplexing. Like, he still wants to be one of the highest paid quarterbacks in the NFL. And it's not like he's been bad, but still, the fact that you're looking at what's been going down with him and him potentially moving on from the Rams because he wants that amount of money, I just find that odd. I'm really curious to see how that goes down, because everything to me points to where he should still be with the Rams, because it's not like he's absolutely demanding. But I also just don't know what team out there is going to be desperate enough to be like, Matthew Stafford, I know you're still really good. I still know you're better, one of the better teams and one of the better players at your position, even at your age. But to pay you $50 million over these next 2 seasons, that's a tough ask. That's a really big ask at this point in his career. Still really good. Just don't think he's $50 million a year good. But then again, most of these guys aren't $50 million a year good. But what I really want to get into is the fact that you look at the NFL cap space for this upcoming season. Whew, let me tell you, it's really high. It's really high. At this point, you look at what had happened last year. In 2024, it jumped to $255 million, which from the previous year was a $31 million increase from 2023. And then this year, it's jumping up to $279.2 million. So you're seeing a $24 million increase, which is going to help. And the big thing about it is, I often look at a lot of the teams around the NFL. I look at the NFL landscape as a whole, but more specifically, what's really curious to me is what happens this offseason for the New Orleans Saints. Because you've been seeing the perpetual upgrade and more money going into each team's cap space because of inflation, because of a majority of different things going on. I love the fact that you have this now, because you have more wiggle room than you maybe thought you had before when it comes to making potential free agent moves. And for me, I've always been the eternal optimist and realistic optimist because of how everything goes down. If we would have seen it and it would have been a lot less than maybe we would have anticipated because of the Saints already being 60 million over the cap. Now you're looking a little less than 40 if we're going to do the math. That makes things a lot easier of you not having to push the can down the road and kick the can down the road in a sense of what we often use when it comes to Mickey Loomis and his Loomisnomics. Whenever I've seen this, I love this for the Saints because now you don't have to put yourself behind the 8 ball in that sense of restructuring Cam Jordan for a 30th time. Same thing with Cam Jordan, doing that with Derek Carr. You don't have to do it with as many people now and put yourself farther and farther back with these aging assets. Now that you are getting less money, or you're getting more money back in a sense, and you're less in the hole, you're now able to restructure some of these guys, front load it, make it a signing bonus, like you've been doing. It's just less often. And to me, that's the most optimal thing to do. However, when I hear a lot of you Saints fans complaining about Derek Carr, you're saying, let's just cut the guy. Here's the thing. If you get rid of Derek Carr, whether it's before June 1st, which essentially isn't going to help you by any stretch of the imagination, but if you get rid of him after June 1st, it ends up making more sense financially. However, if the Saints are as bad as we think they are, and as far behind every other team as we think they are, which I don't necessarily think that. I think if they end up being a lot healthier in this upcoming season and hit on a couple of their draft picks and are smart with their money, then I think they have a chance to actually compete in this NFC South and would have a legitimate chance of actually winning the division and hosting a playoff game. A lot would have to go right, but if you're smart with the money and do everything I just said, I think you'd have a chance. And part of it would still be having Derek Carr as your quarterback. And I know Saints fan, I know Who Dat Nation, you're not happy with Derek Carr. He's enemy number one. He is the ultimate op for you right now. But let me tell you, he's not as bad as you think he is. If you watched him, and I don't want to put everything on those first 2 weeks because those almost feel like an outlier. But once you got to week 3, Eric McCoy went down on that second or third snap of the game. You saw Chris Olave go down multiple times in the season. Rashichi, he wasn't there since week 6 or week 7 after that Bucs game. You also look at plenty of other guys on the defensive side before the Dennis Allen firing were consistently not on the field because of injury. The offensive line was continuously shuffling in and out. Taysom Hill tore his ACL. Juwan Johnson wasn't out there at points in the season. Alvin Kamara also missed weeks throughout the season. Like, it wasn't all Derek Carr's fault for the shortcoming and the fact that the Saints finished with only 5 wins. It wasn't all Derek Carr. It was a multitude of different factors. It wasn't just him. It wasn't just Dennis Allen, who I still think, even though he had some wins here and there, wasn't consistent enough and didn't actually get you big wins to make you feel like you could take that next step forward. But to me, instead of just getting rid of Derek Carr and taking the cap hit, because if you do, whether it is pre or post June 1st, because there's a huge difference, instead of getting rid of him, because if you do, you're going to be basically putting yourself in the same hole as you had before. If you get rid of him, say even post June 1st, and you take the $21 million dead cap that the Saints would be absorbing, you basically break even with the $24 million in extra money from last year. You save $30 million, so you almost get $33 million back. But what are you going to do? Immediately spend it on another quarterback, say like Sam Darnold, who in my eyes is on the same level as Derek Carr? They're in the same tier. I know that Sam Darnold basically revitalized his career, but you can't seriously tell me that Sam Darnold is marginally and significantly better than Derek Carr. You just can't convince me. Go watch the play on the field. Go tell me and look at the career arcs in everything that has gone down in both of their careers. There's just no way you can tell me Sam Darnold is so much better than Derek Carr. And I'm not a Derek Carr apologist or a big believer. I don't think he's all that great. But I think compared to basically any other quarterback that would go in free agency or getting potentially a quarterback in the draft, which that's a whole nother conversation, and I don't think this draft class is all that great, especially when it comes to the quarterbacks, you can't tell me that any of those guys, even Spencer Rattler, you can't tell me any of those quarterbacks out there have just as good, if not a better chance at helping the Saints win than Derek Carr, and it be significantly cheaper. There's not one guy out there that you can look at and be like, yes, he's the guy the Saints should be relying on. Because I know a lot of you out there are telling me, just go with Spencer Rattler. Screw it. Why not? The season's lost. I'm telling you, if everything works out and you're smart with your money, you could have a chance. If you stay healthy and you rock with the coaching staff that Kellen Moore is starting to build, because I'm starting to really like it. I don't think that you're going to win 11, 12 games, but what have we seen from the NFC South as of late? It's not like it's going to take that type of performance from a single team to win the division. The Bucs have been winning with 9 wins the last couple of years, and everyone else has been 8 wins or less. Like, it's not like this is great. This is the worst division in football. You're telling me that if the Saints didn't get significantly injured as much as they did last year, that they wouldn't have had a really good chance of winning the division or being right there? Like, you're telling me if Derek Carr didn't miss any time or say missed 1 or 2 games and Eric McCoy didn't miss as long as he did and Chris Olave and Rashid Shaheed only missed like a combined 4-5 games and more guys on the defensive side were healthy and they had moved on from the defensive line coach, because that was a whole nother thing with Cam Jordan, and he started to actually look like the Cam Vole when it came to production and getting his sack numbers and getting pressure on the quarterback and getting in the backfield. You're telling me if all those things didn't happen, if you're telling me they had happened, they wouldn't be in a much better spot and actually would have been fighting for the division, and if not, have won the division? I think that would have been the case. So look, let me tell you, when it comes to Derek Carr, he's not great, but he's not terrible either. He's a middle-of-the-road quarterback that, yes, you overpaid for, but why would you take the negative in the cap space and put yourself back behind every other team, and even farther back than you already are? You're still in the worst cap situation compared to every other team in the NFL. Why would you put yourself farther back just to get the same tiered quarterback or worse? I'm tired of trying to lose. I'm tired of you out there wanting the Saints to purposefully lose. I'm telling you, I've not been a fan of any other team since I've become a fan of football. But seeing other teams like the Browns and the Giants consistently have to lose and then get these top picks and still not make a difference, I don't want to go through that. I'd rather be middle tier and basically purgatory until the team turns around instead of consistently fighting for these top 5 picks just for it to not work out. I'm seriously done with it. You need to rock with Derek Carr. You need to try and run some of these things back. Definitely not run everything back, but run some of the things back. Let's not get too crazy and just make smart decisions. I'm telling you, if you can make the smart decisions, have Lady Luck be at least a little bit more on your side, not have everybody be decimated by the injuries, the Saints won't look as terrible. Will they win a Super Bowl next year or in the next 2 years? Probably not. But you can turn this team around and actually look like a competent team and a team that can make a run in the playoffs. We've seen it before with other teams where if you just have one good draft class and are smart with your money and have a good free agency, getting guys at a good value price, it can make all the difference in the world. I'm telling you, just give it a chance. Stop trying to lose on purpose. It creates a certain type of mindset that's really difficult to get off of. Ask some of these other teams. Go ask fans of other teams. Would they rather be in the spot that they're in, or would they rather be in the spot of the Saints in the most objective way possible? Maybe not everybody wants to be with the Saints because as of right now, it doesn't look great. Especially if you're asking like a Chiefs fan or an Eagles fan. Definitely want to ask them. But go ask Browns fans what it's like. Go ask what Giants or Jets fans what it's like to be a fan of their team and how they're constantly sucking and underperforming. Go ask them. That's all I ask. I appreciate you listening in to yet another edition of Cleats and Sneaks. We'll be back soon with yet another edition. Hopefully, Kellen Moore's staff can be completed because let me tell you, it's starting to look pretty good. A lot of young guys, but it's starting to filter out and look like something of a competent coaching staff, especially when you're hearing from a lot of the insiders and people around the NFL. They're saying they like what's going down in NOLA. Appreciate you listening. Don't forget to like and subscribe to the YouTube channel, ESPN Southwest Louisiana, covering a bunch of things locally, not just Saints, not just Pelicans. We're doing everything collegially. Astros, they're about to start their season as well, so we got just about everything going down right now. Appreciate you listening in, and I'll talk to you next time.